Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Today, inshallah ta'ala, I want to share with you 5 essential tips to help you read books. These tips, with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will aid us to retain that which we read. The goal of a student of knowledge is not to read as many books as he possibly can. Rather, it's to benefit from the books that he reads. And so therefore, somebody who has read fewer books but understands those books is better and far greater than somebody who has read many books but can't even remember that which he has read. So inshallah ta'ala, let's go through these tips. Tip number 1 is to start the reading session by making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to place barakah in this reading, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to retain this knowledge that we are about to seek. And so a person, for example, they can say the dua, Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana, oh Allah, benefit us from that which you have taught us, wa 'allimna ma yanfa'na, and teach us that which is beneficial for us, wa zidna ilma, and increase us in knowledge. And in that way, inshallah ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place barakah in your reading. And so something that a person can do, for example, is they can have a bookmark, and on that bookmark they can have a dua, or maybe they have a post-it note that they place on the page that they last read. And whenever you open up the book, you immediately see this reminder to say this dua. Tip number 2 is to create a reading schedule that you stick to. When it comes to reading, consistency is very important. And so a person should decide how much of that book they want to read on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, divide that book up into portions and stick to that routine. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Ahabbul a'mali ilallah adwamuha wa in qall," that the most beloved actions to Allah are that which, or those things that are done on a consistent basis, even if they are few. So what I would advise is choose, first of all, how much you're going to read on a daily basis. Choose the time of the day that you're going to read, and also choose a location that you're going to read, yani a place that you're not going to get disturbed. And in that way, a person can build consistency bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. The third tip is to understand the structure of the book. Now, we can understand the structure of the book by reading the contents page. By reading the contents page, this will give us a sort of a roadmap of the book. And this is something that is very important. Many people, they open up a book, they skip the contents page and go straight to the introduction. Rather, if you read the contents page from the beginning to the end, you will get a brief overview of what the book is about. And so what I would advise is that the next time you start a book, begin by reading the contents. Figure out how many chapters there are, what are the names of these chapters, what are the subtitles or subcategories. And if a person can even write this out in a form of a diagram, this will give them a introduction of that book, especially complex books that require that extra bit of focus. The fourth tip, which is probably one of the most important things, is to engage actively with the text. Don't just read the book and flick through the pages. Rather, interact with the book. Write down notes on the side, on the margins. Highlight important facts. Summarize some of the paragraphs. When you come across a sequence, then number them. The more you engage with the text, the more you interact it, the more chance you have of retaining that knowledge. So what I would advise is, the next time you open up a book, have your pencil ready, have a pen ready, have your highlighters ready, have your sticky notes ready, and as you're reading, interact with the book. Don't be afraid to take a pen and place it on the book and write notes next to it. And that way as well, the next time you read that book, again in the future, you'll be able to read the notes that you made as well. And even further than that, inshallah ta'ala, if you have the opportunity to teach that book, you will have a good understanding of the book based on the notes that you made inside of that book. The fifth and final tip that I want to mention today is to summarize the book as you go along. So whenever you've come to the end of a chapter, try to summarize within a paragraph what that chapter was about. By doing this, it will ensure that your brain is actively trying to think, what did I just read? And when the brain works in this manner, it's more likely that you understand that information and retain it as well. So the next time you finish a chapter, pause, give yourself 5 minutes just to summarize, write down what that whole chapter was about in a summarized fashion. It might take 2, 3, 4 sentences to do so. So to summarize, we've mentioned 5 tips that will help you retain the knowledge that you read from books. And that is, number 1, begin by making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, have a reading schedule. Number 3 is to understand the structure of the book by reading the contents page. Number 4 is to actively engage with the text of the book. And finally, to summarize the chapters as you go along. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this lesson beneficial for everybody, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid us all in our path of seeking knowledge. Allahumma ameen. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ختامه مسك